Hello everyone, this is English instructor Denisha Smith, and the purpose of this video is to provide a basic overview of professional and technical communication. Let's get started. And so your course either is titled Professional Communication or Technical Communication. Please note that these terms are used interchangeably within this discipline. Technical communicators tend to research and create information about technical processes or products directed to a targeted audience through various forms of media. So for example, if you have a bookshelf that you're trying to put together, you probably have a manual for that bookshelf. A technical communicator probably wrote that manual, okay? They're the individuals who will take a lot of highly technical information, condense it down, and make sure that their targeted audience can understand the information. So you do not have to be an engineer to know how to put your bookshelf together. All you need to do is be able to follow the manual which a technical communicator produced for an audience of people who are not engineers. Does that make sense? So that's more or less the technical communicator role. But professional communication is like a twin of that, and they work together as well. So within the whole field of professional communication, it encompasses written communication, oral communication, visual, digital communication, interpersonal communication, and that's usually situated within a workplace context. So whether your class is termed professional communication or technical communication, we will be doing a whole lot of writing, oral, visual, digital communication within a workplace context this semester. And so in other words, like I just said, professional communication is all communication that is done on the job or in a professional context. And the same is true with technical communication. There's also a focus on persuasion and problem solving for a specific audience within these fields. So let's take a look at the professional communication triangle, also called the technical communication triangle. This model is really important to understanding a lot of what we'll do this semester. And so, of course, there are three sides because it's a triangle. And on one end, we have the informed writer, we have the practical purpose, and then we have the audience with diverse needs. And so, as a student in this class and as a professional communicator, you want to always be the informed writer. Okay? You are the informed writer. In order for you to be the informed writer, you have to be informed. So you have to know what you're talking about. You have to make sure that you're prepared when you submit assignments. You have to make sure that you have read the assignment overviews so that you know what it is I'm asking you to do, that you're submitting the right information. You want to make sure that you double check your information, that you make sure your research is right, that you make sure your information is correct, that you check your spelling and your grammar. Okay, so you want to make sure you do all of that because all of that contributes to you being an informed writer. So let's say, for example, you are reading a book. Let's say you're reading a textbook and you keep finding typos in that textbook or you keep finding bad information, okay? That's going to make the writer or the creator or the author of that textbook not look informed. Okay, and what that does is that writer or that creator of that information will take a hit to his or her credibility. And so that's the C word, if you will, in this class. You want to always guard your credibility. Your credibility is your professional reputation. And so if at any point in time your credibility goes down because you're making careless or needless errors, then you're no longer the informed writer, and then you jeopardize your communication with your audience. So you want to always guard your credibility by making sure that you are acting as the informed writer, making sure that your information is accurate, that you have your spelling and your grammar correct, and that you're prepared with your information. Okay? You want to make sure that you do that at all times. Okay? Good professional communicators use the writing process for written communication. They consider their audience. They collect and document information carefully. They keep the information short and simple, and they avoid jargon. They use organizational techniques to improve ease of use of their documents, and they use active voice and writing primarily. Okay, and so we're talking about becoming better communicators in general. And these are some of the things that should happen if you're a good communicator, if you're a professional communicator, a good technical communicator. Okay, and so we'll take a look at some of these things in a little bit more detail. And so in terms of the writing process is a formula that everybody can follow to help you produce your best writing. Okay, that's the goal of it, to help the writer produce his or her best writing. And so it is a process that happens in 5 main steps. You have pre-writing, which is when you're first given the assignment and you have to figure out what you're going to do with it. This is the time when you may brainstorm, or you may free write to kind of generate ideas, or you may do some other techniques to kind of gather ideas to figure out the direction that you'll go with the assignment you've been given. In the drafting step, you are pulling the information that you've gathered, all of your ideas and the direction that you plan to go. You're pulling all of that together into the format of the assignment. Okay, so let's say I've asked you to write a letter, and this letter needs to follow proper letter format and include 3 paragraphs. And so even at the drafting stage, you want to make sure that the draft you create is a letter that follows correct letter format and that has at least 3 paragraphs. If your draft only contains 2 paragraphs, then you're not following the assignment requirements, right? And so you want to make sure that even in the drafting stage that you're pulling the assignment into the proper format per the assignment requirements. In the revising stage, you are taking your draft and you're making it better. So you're going through your work and you are changing sentences out. You're making sure your grammar is correct. You're maybe taking out phrases that you overuse. And so we tend to write how we speak. And so sometimes when we speak, we have phrases that we use. We have different things that we might say, maybe even slang terms. And so you want to make sure that you take that out of your writing and that your writing is as clean and as streamlined as possible. The next step is editing/proofreading. And this is when you're making your document correct. You're removing all errors. So you're going through and you're editing it very, very, very carefully to make sure that there are no careless errors, no needless errors, no missing information. You're making sure that everything is as accurate and correct as it can be. And that last step of the writing process is publishing. And that's when you're finalizing the document and submitting it to the intended audience. In our case, in this class setting, when you submit your final draft, you're in the publishing stage and you're essentially saying, Ms. Smith, this is my best possible work. You can grade it. Okay, I stand behind my work, you can grade it. And so you want to go through the writing process so that you get to that publishing stage and that you're confident with the work that you've produced. Now keep in mind that the writing process is not linear. You're not necessarily just going to start at pre-writing and then go straight to drafting and straight to revising in this very neat line. Okay, sometimes you start at pre-writing and you go to drafting and you realize that you need to brainstorm some more or you need to generate some more ideas. And so you may have to go back to the pre-writing stage before you can continue on in the process. So it is not linear. Sometimes you have to go back up to a previous step in order for you to continue to move forward. But you should follow the writing process. Now let's talk about audience. You always want to think about who do you expect to read and or receive the information you produce. You also want to think about why they might be interested in the information and how they will view the purpose of the document. Okay? You always want to keep the golden rule of professional or technical writing or communication in mind, and that is to write for your reader, not for yourself. You're always thinking about your audience. Okay? And so let me give you an example. And this is an exercise I do in class with students who are taking my face-to-face class. Let's say I've given you the assignment that you have to ask for money. You're in a situation where you have to ask for money. Now let's say there are 5 different scenarios, 5 different types of audience. Let's say you need to ask for money from a spouse. Okay? Let's say you need to ask for money from a boss, maybe like a raise. Okay, let's say you need to ask for money from a bank. Let's say you're trying to get a loan to start a business. Okay, let's say you need to ask for money from a friend, a best friend. Okay, and let's say you need to ask for money from, let's say, a spouse. Okay, so those 5 different audiences. Depending on the audience, your whole approach will change. And so if you're asking for money from a parent or from a spouse or from a best friend, you may just contact them informally via phone or via text message or face to face. Okay? You may just show up. You may not have given it much thought. You may bank on the fact that they are confident in your ability to pay them back. They know you very well. They care about you. They probably will come through for you without you having to do very much. However, if you're asking for money from a boss or from a bank, with that audience change, your approach is going to change, right? And so when you go to the bank, you probably want to have paperwork with you, maybe some financial paperwork, or some bank stubs, or different things you might want to take, a business plan even, just to show that you can pay the money back. And in the case of your boss, maybe you want to bring in past evaluations, right, to show that you are a good employee, or your different things you've done on the job, and just kind of things you want to think through. So when your audience changes, your whole approach to how you communicate will change. So you always need to know who's your audience. Who am I writing this to? Now, in most every instance, just about every instance, I will be your audience in this class. Okay? So what does that mean? I am your English instructor at this college level, right? And so you don't want to write or speak or communicate with me like I'm a friend, because I'm your instructor. And so you want to make sure you maintain a level of formality with that. You don't want to use any type of text message language in any communication that you give to me. You want to make sure that you're putting your information in the correct format, because your information will be graded. You will be evaluated on it. And so you want to always keep your audience in mind. But then there's also that general context of workplace writing. And so in some instances, you may want to consider other audiences as well. Okay? If you're giving this to a coworker, or if you're getting this information to your supervisor, what else might you need to consider? Okay? And so make sure you always remember to write for the reader and not for yourself. Always consider what your audience needs to know, not just what you need to know. Audience needs. So in our field of professional or technical communication, the people who receive our communication usually have pretty specific needs, and we were talking about that a little bit in that technical writing triangle, right? Professional communication triangle. The informed writer, the practical purpose, and then the audience with diverse needs. You should keep in mind that most readers or users share 4 similar features, okay? Your audience tends to be interrupted while they're reading, okay? Often interrupted. And so they're also impatient to find important information. They often lack your knowledge of the topic, and the documents they read are often seen by others as well. Okay? And so when I say they're often interrupted by while reading, let's say, for example, you are sending an email to your supervisor. Okay? Chances are your supervisor is sitting at his or her computer. They may have several screens open at one time. Their phone may be ringing. Somebody may be walking in their office door, all at the same time while your email is coming through. Okay, so there's often a lot of interruptions in the workplace, and so keep that in mind. And they're often impatient to find important information. We tend to use subheadings a lot in this type of writing, okay? So unlike essay writing, where you're just pretty much writing straight essays, in professional communication or technical communication, we use subheadings so that the reader can easily find that section of information that's needed, okay? Your audience will often lack your knowledge of the topic. Again, if we take another, kind of go back to that triangle we were looking at, you're the informed writer. You're the one with the information. You're the one with the knowledge. And so if you go through and try to get that information to that audience will then be informed. But without your communication, they will often lack your knowledge of the topic. Okay, the documents they read are often seen by others as well, so you want to keep that in mind. Let's go back to that bookshelf example. If you have a manual for putting together that bookshelf, you may not be the only one looking at it. Other people may also see it and be trying to help you assemble that bookshelf. Okay, and a memo, for example, that you send to your supervisor could be seen by his or her boss as well. And so you want to keep in mind that your communication tends to go beyond even the audience that you intended. Okay, so you want to make sure that you write for your reader and not for yourself. Again, that golden rule of technical communication. There's something we call the KISS method. Okay, KISS stands for keep it short and simple. And so with our audience needs in mind, we want to remember that they don't have a lot of time to spare. And so you want to make sure that you communicate clearly and use as few words as possible to communicate your message. You don't want it to take a long time for your audience to be able to get to the main point of what it is you're trying to say, or what it is you need, or what it is you need them to do to be able to take action. Okay, and so you want to make sure you keep your written, your verbal, all of your communication short and simple. And don't use words that only people in your field will understand if your readers include people who are not in your field. That's jargon, okay? And so if you are an accounting major and you speak in accounting terms, then you're going to understand that. But if you're not an accounting major, if you've not had any experience with that field, then you're not going to understand what they're saying. So keep in mind that you need to avoid jargon. You want to collect and document information carefully. Use information from credible sources, okay? We all have that friend, okay? We all do have that friend that we love them dearly, but we are going to double check whatever they tell us, right? Don't you have that friend? And so, we want to make sure that our information is credible, okay? We want to make sure that we can repeat what we are gathering. Okay, so if we have that friend that we always have to double check behind them, we're not necessarily going to tell somebody what they tell us because we want to make sure it's credible. And so the same is true with your research in this class. You want to use information from sources that are credible so that you feel comfortable repeating the information that you've collected, that you've gathered. Okay, keep in mind that your name is always on the line. And so if you use information from a source that's not credible, you're going to be the one to take the hit for that, right? Because it's coming from you. And so you want to always make sure that you guard your credibility. You always want to be the informed writer. Okay? And we do use MLA format for documenting and citing work in this class. So we'll talk more about MLA format in the coming weeks. And finally, with page design, that is a key element of professional or technical communication. That's the look of the document. And like I said before, you want to make sure you use headings, subheadings, lists, bulleted lists are good, and various typefaces within reason to improve the look and flow of information. You always want your work to be clean, and you always want your work to be streamlined, and easy to navigate. You don't want someone to look at your information and feel like they have to kind of go through every single thing in the world to find what it is that they need. And keep in mind that good page design does add to the writer's credibility. So that's really important. Remember, your audience needs to be able to find information quickly. Okay, this information has come from a specific textbook from William Sanborn Pfeiffer. And this is the documentation for that if you're interested in looking into that a little bit more. But of course, our textbook will have great information as well. Keep all of those things in mind as you are going through this course. And if you have any questions along the way, please don't hesitate to contact me.